Hello? There we go. All right, perfect. I don't have to speak so loudly. All right, everybody. My name is Rahid Cornejo. I see a lot of familiar faces here. I'm part of the Bergen Arches Preservation Coalition. I'm the project director. I have Chris from New Jersey Conservation Foundation with me. We're going to be going through a couple of updates for the Bergen Arches and its current status. Right now, our organization is mainly focused on creating this awareness around the arches because a lot of people still don't know it exists in Jersey City and the potential it has to connect to the Essex Hudson Greenway and the embankment, which we're also going to discuss, which are currently funded greenways on both sides of the arches that we have opportunity to connect to. So let me just go to the next slide. I'm going to show you a quick video of an area we're going to be talking about today and really focusing on for this presentation, which is more towards the eastern side of the arches. But we're going to be also talking about the challenges we face in connecting to the Essex Hudson Greenway on the west side of the arches.
So the key here is that the developer is going to own the first block, which makes sense, being that there's going to be a building on that and residential units. And then the rest of the branch is going to be owned by the city or an easement or a nonprofit, ultimately, is what it's going to be based on this settlement. And now the long-term plan, as I touched on earlier, is to have connectivity between basically the waterfront on the Hudson, extending all the way back over the 6th Street embankment, through the Bergen Arches, and then many of you have read about where we're going with OSI with regards to acquiring a bike lane, a bike path that will connect Jersey City ultimately to Montclair, so Hudson County through Essex County. So the big picture here is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for any city. You don't see chances like this that surface, and that's why we're really mindful of putting all these pieces together, because they happen to be aligned in this particular moment.
Okay, so that was from 2020, and I don't know if you guys can guess who that was speaking, but that was Stephen Fulop. And that just kind of shows you how long this has been discussed. And obviously, we've come a long way since that time, and many things have happened and developed with the embankment and the arches. But now we've come to a moment where we've had the city conduct a feasibility study that talks about this idea and challenge of putting both transit and a greenway for pedestrians and bike and walk for people to just access and enjoy nature next to each other. So this is just a quick image here of the city's cover for the feasibility study. It's available online. We're going to be putting it on our website, and we'll be printing it out as well to kind of showcase at our office space at 2815 Kennedy. But now, kind of just talking in terms of context, I still know there's a lot of people that don't know where the arches is, and hopefully that drone video kind of puts it in context a little bit. But just if you didn't know where you were in that moment, Route 139 is to your right, and I have Dickinson High School to the left. And you could see why it's easy to sort of pass by this space and just kind of miss it, because it's right under you, and you probably walk by it many times and just haven't noticed that it's there. So really, that's why we got started with the Bergen Arches Preservation Coalition, is to try to create this awareness that this space exists, because once people find out about it, they see a lot of different opportunities to do a lot with this space. Yeah.
So one of the wonderful things about the arches is that on either end of them, there's an incredible project coming together. On the western side, we have the Essex Hudson Greenway that comes and ends within a couple of 100 feet of the arches. And then there's some active rail, there's some puzzles, and then you're into the arches. You continue through the arches, you come out, you get to a high school, and you get to a wonderful series of trees that are currently kind of a rail buffer between another active rail line and the high school. You get to Newark Avenue, you continue down that just a few steps, and you get to the embankment, another incredible project. So we're quite lucky to be the connector between these two amazing things. If anyone has any questions or has a quick orientation that they want to check in on, or anything they want to ask through this, feel free to, just throw up your hand and we'll take questions. Do we do tours? That is the question that I would love to say yes to more than anything else. And I think for some people, a tour is what's going to bring this all together, because it's a little bit tough to fully understand it if you haven't been in there. And right now, the public can't go in there. They haven't been able to go in there. And so that's one of our hopes, is that we can get some limited permission to bring people in for community educational events. And we're very lucky because one end is right by the high school. There's a road from the high school parking lot down, and then there's a road into one end of the Bergen Arches. By chance, I'll go to it right here. And so one of our asks, and if anyone wanted to share the feedback, we've had a lot of feedback of like, how could you have an educational near-term event in the Arches? Feel free to put that in under feedback, because the more folks that are interested and would be willing to come to that, then the more likely we can bring it to fruition.
Which you mentioned that from the western end, you know, Pence, 100 feet, and then there's but the second word.
Yep.
We mentioned that.
Couple different, yeah. So active rail line, and we can look at the map in more detail in a little bit, but active rail line, you can't cross at grade for pedestrian purposes. So the tracks, we can't just have a crossing like you may be imagining in the rest of the country where you just sort of cross an active rail line. It has to be elevated and it has to be fully safe for pedestrians and bikes. So kind of puzzle one is just, where would you put that? Where would you land it on either end? Doesn't necessarily have to be straight. There's some very interesting ideas about how you have a meandering bridge. What's the slope of that bridge? Maybe we could walk up something steep. Maybe if we're biking, it needs to be, you know, much more gradual approach. Maybe when you're up that high, you kind of have an interesting view of the river. So maybe there's an educational component there. So there's a question of just, how do you connect these things? What type of connection? Is it just a pedestrian bridge? Imagine like the St. Peter's crossing, get from point A to point B. Is it a bridge that you could take a bike over? Does it extend farther back? Where does it land? And then how does it tie into the arches there? Layer onto that, who owns what? We are working on a soundtrack. So if anyone has soundtrack ideas, just hit it. Just hit it in the talk. Yeah, awesome. We love it. We've submitted that in the comments, so that is now, that'll now be part of the comment record. Yeah.
Yeah. If I start to lag, like, stick the music.
Here's the Bergen Arches up here.
Dickinson High School here. York Avenue. Waldo. Veterans Memorial. Down through here, to the embankment.
One of the projects we're working on now
Is to figure out how to connect the Bergen Arches, either with a conversation with the school, to York Avenue, especially walkway in the existing city bike lanes, and then ultimately down to the embankment.
I'm back. So we have the Bergen Arches here. One of the projects we're working on now is how to connect the Bergen Arches down to Newark Avenue. So two options. There's a portion that could go just on the edge of the school property. We're lucky that there's an existing viewpoint there. There's an existing path here. And then there's, you know, options that we have to work out with the school, but we could just have a very minimal impact on their use, well away from where any of the students would be, and would be a great chance just to have some more educational advantages for the students. And then second option is to work with the rail line to just have a little bit of a sliver here. That's mainly a conversation about how much of a buffer. This is the active rail line. If you all have seen the trains rolling through Jersey City, this is where they roll. So we need to have a substantial buffer, fences, safe. It's got to work for everybody. So that's an active area of study now. This is the active rail line here, Waldo Avenue. So right now, today, and we have, we did bring in a fun expert to check this out. So our fun expert is walking the part by the high school. So he's left here, he's walked along this path, and then where this picture is taken, this existing handicap accessible, in place. It's already there. It's amazing. Path runs right along here up to there. So if we were to go the high school route, one option would be just to work with this existing path and then connect through the high school land to the arches roughly here. So wouldn't touch the rail property at all. Option 2 is to use some of the conservation funds that are for acquiring new parks and expanding parks to put a strip right through here. One advantage of that, and for those of you who are here in person, if you look over on that chart, you'll see a little blue sticky note in the bottom left. Jersey City used to have a trolley line, actually a bunch of them, but they used to have one that ran from here all the way down over to here. So when we talk about a lot of the park is already done and there today, this is already graded for a trolley line grade. So we could all just walk out of here. We'd have to move a few sticks, climb over a few things, but there's no ravines, there's no barriers. You can just walk right up there and walk into the arches. So very lucky that it's in place. Any more questions, or did we get your answer? Yep. This is not an active option in the sense that we would have to cross an active rail line. So that would involve a massive bridge. And one of the things we're focused on is what can happen quickly and in this current. Yep. Yep. Basically, imagine this line here. We could go on one side of this line through the school property. If that, for whatever reason, wasn't available, we could go on the other side of the option through the rail property, both connecting to Newark Avenue, then to the existing Jersey City bike lanes, right to downtown Jersey City. Correct. Neither of those crosses an active rail line. The active rail line is this black line here, and there's a bridge right here. So we would come out of the arches to Newark Avenue, onto the existing Jersey City bike lanes, and then those go right under this bridge. We talked about our fund testing. There's some more arrows. One of the things that I like to highlight on this slide is when we work on parks in other parts of New Jersey, their end goal, the dream they have years out, is things like a designated park where people understand how to have drainage, electric, vehicular access, EMS, fire department, handicap access, parking. All this stuff today already exists with the arches. So some of it's at the high school, some of it's at the street level, some of it's paths like this that need a little leaf blower and a little clipper, but a huge amount of what a park is already in place today. Reed, you want to tell us about this incredible slide?
That area that Chris was just speaking about, this is taken within that area. So you can kind of just see between the highway and the high school, how much green space there actually is already existing there. One thing we like saying is there is a lot of green space in Jersey City. It's just not accessible for people. But if you were to take a map and try to map out everything that existed right now in terms of green space around the city, you'd see that there is a lot of space that we could potentially use to reactivate and allow people to access. Challenges here?
So going to the question of how close and what are the challenges, we're now on the western end of the Bergen Arches. We've come out on Kennedy Boulevard, gone through the Spaghetti Interchange for 1 and 9. This is where the Essex Hudson Greenway terminates. There's some other possibilities to kind of loop it down through some of these other abandoned rail lines, maybe up into here. But fundamentally, in some process, you have to cross 2 active rail lines. Rahid and I were doing a trash pickup, like dirt off the ground and trash off the ground, on this road here. And when you're in here, there happens to be some cranes doing construction here now. This is just amazingly close. It's a couple 100 feet. So you have this sense of just like how immediately available it is. to get on the Essex Hudson Greenway, but yet also 2 active rail lines. Yep. Yeah, this probably in the future, this red line would be a little bit more meandering and go down this road and then scooch like that. Straight line. And when we're sort of overlaying the complexities here, there's a lot of different rail lines here. So there's active passenger lines, there's freight lines. So there's a huge amount of infrastructure, one on top of the other, and a huge amount of organizations that have a different piece and an interest and a vision that often just hasn't connected with the other visions yet. Not that they're for them, not that they're against them. They just haven't made contact with what else the other agencies and communities and groups are doing in this section. Question? Yep. I'm going to ask someone to push the magic button that makes that red countdown go away. And webinar. Good. And sir, we can look at the model. We brought the model because we had a lot of questions on the west side. So we can look at the model afterward, and we can talk more about like specifically where this is, because Dickinson High School, at least folks have a sense of where the high school is. This area here, unless you're actively a self-storage customer, you probably, or have joined us on one of our cleanups, you probably have not found yourself like along this road. We invite you all to come do a cleanup. It's fun. So one of the things we're looking for in the near term is to get folks into the arches so there can be a tour. So one of the, I guess, conversations that we're starting to have with New Jersey Transit, we have an agreement that lets us do some limited maintenance and some limited testing in the arches. We want to expand that, one more sentence, and you can bring people into the arches for limited tours when accompanied by one sentence, to bring people from the high school parking lot down to the arches and have a minute here to understand what's really going on in the arches. You will all be the first to know if that happens. Does anyone recognize this? Bonus points available. Yeah. So this is a great example of just a low-cost trail that the city did in an active area where they're doing work right now. I took this picture just actually the last sunny day. Like, remember that very first sunny day we had? I was like, first sunny day, taking a picture. Simple path. People in Jersey City are great. They're not out in the water. They're not throwing stuff off. They're not acting ridiculous. Very responsible. Properly managed, limited hours. Amazing, right? Very easy to think about replicating this in an early portion of the arches to bring people in and give them some education and a sense of what it is. We can talk about all the nuances of next steps, but this is basically kind of where we're headed, which is to try and get a little bit more scope to bring people into the arches. Talk about some pocket parks, have a thoughtful engagement about how we get from the arches down to the western end of the embankment, and then how do we connect the arches to future parks. We have some requests. Green Acres funding is a state program. Board of Ed would need to be involved in obviously anything with the school. And then thinking about how do we thoughtfully engage with New Jersey Transit and share all the feedback that we're getting about where there should be bus lines, where maybe there shouldn't be bus lines. Do people want a bus stop up on the streets? So very interested in those ideas. And then we get lots of questions, but one of them is like, why are we talking about buses going through the arches? Why don't you put them on the street? Right now, New Jersey Transit owns the arches. They're very upfront. The people of New Jersey pay them to do buses and trains. And so they're planning buses and trains. We want to have a really thoughtful conversation with them about where that should go And we're hopeful that the result of that is we all just put our heads together and get a solution that, at least in the near term, gets a park. In other places, they've reserved the right to have transit sometime in the future. But in the near term, it could be a park very quickly. It could be a lot of green space preserved. And once people are down there, I think collectively everyone will really understand what we're dealing with and will be in a much better position to make a really educated long-term decision. Yeah. Breaking news right now. Still a question. And still a question if it's 50-50. Maybe it's not 50-50, right? Maybe I have to shorten my tape measure in places for emergency pull-offs and things like that. But one of the reasons we started this so early, instead of waiting for them to do their entire study and then have a comment period kind of at the very end of this, is we want to submit meaningful comments when they're at the very beginning of thinking about this. So we don't want to have somebody come in and share a $20 million, thoroughly well-designed, incredible plan to put buses through the arches. We want to quickly submit feedback and say, let's study lots of things. Let's see what makes sense. New Jersey and Jersey City have a meaningful need to spend their transit dollars well and their park dollars well. All of the problems that we've talked about on connecting either end of the arches to the streets, to other streets, are multiple times more expensive if you're talking about buses than if you are talking about bikes and pedestrians. So just as a straight dollars, if New Jersey were to spend dollars, where do you get the most bang for your dollar? There's a real conversation to be had. Where do you put the buses? So we want to have a very thoughtful conversation with them and also share with them, like, the embankment's happening. The Essex Hudson Greenway is happening with state dollars that connects to the other end of the arches. One could ask the question, like, is it logical for the state to spend tens of millions of dollars to have a bike path that ends, then have a little bit of a bus line, not have buses on the street, and then at the other end of this, have an expensive connection into the Holland Tunnel or the streets, and then have another incredible bike line that goes down and goes through the embankment and the downtown Liberty State Park? And I think many folks would look at this and say, maybe there's a better plan. So thank you all for coming, and we look forward to the thoughts, and hopefully that better plan comes. We can take a picture. We can also get it on the website. There is no secret team behind us. This is the whole band right here. So we're not super fast with some parts of this, but we'll get it up there. And yep. Yeah. I don't believe so. No. There are areas that are reserved for transit. Not imminent, definitely not for FIFA. It's like very similar, like same deal as the embankment. Like there's a little sliver, but will there ever be transit on there? Like, it's hard to see it making sense, and it's hard to see, especially once people experience what it is and see where transit dollars could be better spent. It's hard to see there being significant transit quickly. I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Good question. The state's allocated $20 million to figure that out. And a lot of folks have been like, wait a minute, $20 million. That's actually that's a real amount of money. There is a street right above it. A lot of folks in the Heights have shared that they feel like they have a hard time getting the transit that they feel they need. People have shared that the PATH train is very busy. Y'all know the challenges. This happens to connect to the Holland Tunnel right into New York now. There's already access. You could imagine at significant cost coming out of the arches and building a huge ramp that connects in to the Holland Tunnel connection area or to Jersey City streets. But you can imagine the cost of that and the time. And so the pollution, the challenges, they don't right now. I think this is a to be figured out question, but the things we've heard is there's no buses in the Holland Tunnel now. There could be. It could go to one of the PATH stations downtown and have a drop off and then loop around and go back up to Secaucus. We can look more at a few more slides, or we can talk more about bus access. We can do either one. Good question. I know it goes to the Tropicana plant. I know it goes to an active port. I feel like this is a chance for audience involvement. If anyone wants to, yeah, there's definitely, you see the Tropicana, like Tropicana, and you see Amazon. Yeah. But that's a good question. If anyone wants to look it up and like what actually is on all of these.
Is there a world where there could be like less
Mm-hmm.
stuff, oil with them? Then what happens?
Mm-hmm.
It's being transported. And that makes it really deep.
We can talk about city pocket parks. The city's done a great job building these little pocket parks above the arches. When we talked about how a lot of the infrastructure is already in place, these all have just the basic stuff that parks have: railing, safety, drainage. They're all right next, not open yet. Opening this year, coming soon, right? Built quickly at a known cost by contractors with insurance, et cetera. So the proof of concept of all of this is readily available. So very easy to imagine the folks who built the benches on the top. So benches in the bottom. Harder to understand costing out an entire bus system. We can talk more about this map in relation to how would you connect the bus lines in on either end, but the quick answer is it's not a readily apparent answer.
What's this?
Hold on. We should make the mass on the mic so people can hear.
Okay.
The live stream.
This is our 8th talk.
Okay.
Everyone gets a little bit better, but we are figuring out the little bits by little bits. So thank you.
At the juncture where the little dot is, in the middle, can you go north? What's that orange line that goes up north? I'm just trying to think of all the construction that's gone on, you know, right around that, the eastern side of that, circle. It's like a challenge to get those people up to the heights.
Yeah, today this is not open, more theoretical possibility, but not open today. Yep. Do we want to talk more about the Western Connection, or we feel like we understand the location and the challenges? Mm-hmm. Yep. There's a lot of people that want to take New Jersey Transit to work in the city. They, nope, they want to come from, you know, Chatham and Summit and, you know, wherever. They go through Secaucus. New Jersey Transit is backed up. There's tunnel construction. There's legitimate concerns they have there about how they move the people they've committed to move. They have a line on a map that goes down through the arches from Secaucus that they control that connects to the Holland Tunnel very readily. And so you could imagine, as a transportation planner, if the arches weren't incredibly awesome and they were just already a paved parking lot, you could say that's actually a very logical spot. So that's the demand, is how do you get people from the rest of New Jersey into the city? If Secaucus is backed up, is there an overflow point? And maybe there are a lot of overflow points, maybe better than the arches.
This is the first time I came to a meeting for the Bergen Arches. I heard about it for years. And having worked in the city council, the mayor's office, I just kind of tired of being involved a little bit. And I've been fascinated by how it's still progressing. Now, I'm ask you a question. Who has jurisdiction of this land that you're talking about? Is it the state? New Jersey Transit has the authorization over it, or the city has any say in it? Who just happens has control over? We're hearing about the New Jersey Transit. When I was in Ward B for city council, they came to us regarding the light rail. They didn't make the determination of what's going to go down there. So what is the protocol between these agencies? Is New Jersey Transit control that area? Or is it the city of Jersey, has city have a say in it? Or is it a state control?
I'll trade you like that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Question was, who has control of the site and the areas around the arches? And one of the challenges, and one of the things that have also kept the arches in their current state, just growing and being more wonderful, is that there's many different groups that have control of the arches and involvement. Department of DEP is doing the Essex Hudson Greenway. New Jersey Transit controls the arches. Obviously, the city controls some of the streets in Jersey City. The county controls some of the streets in Jersey City. Board of Ed controls the school. Rail lines control the private rail. So there's a lot of different people that have to get on the same page and make it work. One of the reasons we're focused on a simple pocket park is that it's achievable with the sort of minimum number of stakeholders.
Pocket park you're talking about?
I just.
Yep. Question was, what do we mean by a pocket park? A little demonstration park where we can bring people in and show them the arches. Limited public tours. Mm-hmm. Comment was that we all are an interest group. Yes, correct, 100%. Reed, do you want to jump and share? We can keep digging into this, but I feel like the folks in this room have a pretty good handle on where the arches are located. And so I don't know if we need to dig into these slides too much, but Reed.
So yeah, the whole transit discussion has been kind of a thing that has been ongoing since the news dropped. We've been collecting community input I know I have a QR code. It's somewhere here. I don't know if you guys know how to use that, but this will take you to the bergenarches.com/comment page. There you can read about NJ Transit's press release, because that's really all the information we have right now as to what they're planning on doing in the Bergen Arches with their Transitway project. We've gotten a lot of feedback about, and it's been very mixed, but I think a lot of it is pointing towards this idea that yes, Jersey City, there are people in Jersey City that want easier ways of commuting throughout the city and also to their jobs. And they feel like generally there needs to be more of a study done to implement bus lanes throughout Jersey City as to whether or not it is the best use for the arches. I think that is still misunderstood because people haven't been able to access it. Once you get people close enough to the arches and going through what Chris was talking about with the Green Acres applications and building the sort of pocket park behind Dickinson, bringing them as close as possible to that first arch and letting them see the project will create this understanding that, or question, is bus lanes the best use of this property? And do we really want to remove all the trees? But the whole idea is to really get people in there. Without getting people in there, you can't really understand the scale of it, or see what makes it so special. And being there is way different than looking at it through an image. So that with this pocket park idea, this is sort of the trajectory we're trying to go towards, to create that access short term, but while still keeping that conversation, which has been happening, like Maureen said, for 26 years about putting highways through the arches. That conversation is going to keep happening until we could sit at the table with NJ Transit and have a meaningful discussion about what the arches should actually be. While that's happening, we have this idea, this goal that we could work towards, try to create that access in the short term. So you could go to the website bergenarches.com/comment, read about the proposal from NJ Transit, put in your comment. We're collecting more and more each day, and we're going to keep putting up stuff on our website, potential other things that the community could help us with.
Let me say a few things. This is the first I've heard of this pocket park demonstration idea, and it sounds perfect. It sounds like exactly what you want to do. If you can get New Jersey Transit to agree to a small piece of the puzzle. And maybe I'm saying the obvious, but we've got a whole new administration here in Jersey City. We've got some really good people in the state legislature from this district. Let's get them to ask for this. We can ask for it and we should. They should listen to us, but they will listen to the mayor. They will listen to city council. They will listen to the assembly people. If they say, we want to go down into the Bergen Arches, can you make arrangements to get us down there? Because I think you're totally right. You go down there, it's a no-brainer. As soon as you're down there, you say, wow, this is an amazing place and this needs to be so I don't know who the who is. If it's just the two of you, you need more of us involved to do the political stuff. You need to get the word out about this demonstration project. I pay close attention to this stuff. This is the first I've heard of it. So I don't know if anybody else is in the same. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we should say a great amount of thanks to the folks that were just elected to different roles. When they had an enormous amount of other things going on, they reached out and brought us in, gave us time. We brought our full show, laid it out in a huge conference room, and they spent real time with us and have taken the time to follow. I would say all of our great elected officials, but James Hallman has been wonderful. So Mayor Solomon. So yeah, thank you. And I think we're at a new point in relations between Jersey City and New Jersey as far as some of these little projects going, and maybe bigger projects too.
I was just thinking about running buses through Bergen Arches, and I think the most effective part of that is filling 30 feet of it wide with asphalt, black asphalt. And I was just thinking about in Europe, sometimes you see those trams that run over green track, where instead of having rubble and the railroad ties. There's just grass and the small little rails that penetrate the grass, and it helps absorb stormwater. It helps reduce the acoustic noise of the trains moving through the park and so forth. And also doesn't create that. It adds more greenery to the situation. And I wonder, since Transit's trying to do this futuristic thing with an automated busway, and so that the robots are sort of driving the buses, if maybe it could be designed in a way that there's just where the tires go, there's like a little track, and then you can leave space for green inside, in between the tracks. I think advocating for that would really help, because if they do move buses, think about it, if like having it all green in there versus having half of it black asphalt would really, I think, change significantly what the vibe of the place looks like.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the highway here and I'm loving your idea for this highway. Yeah, put it on the highway. Good comment. And people have come forward with some very interesting ideas about stormwater retention, and there's rail systems. There's basically gridded concrete with soil and grass in between, and love it. Same problem still exists on either end, massively expensive, and same opportunity still exists to move it on to the street and give some service to people who live in Jersey City and would love a bus stop and love more transit options, and would also love a street that absorb more stormwater.
Hi, do you have a site in mind for this proposed pocket park?
Yes. Yeah, let's go. We can go back. Too far back. Tech support. Phone a friend. Yeah, right here. So access via Dickinson High School. This loops down. You come in on the existing rail grade, and then pocket park right there. And if anybody says yes to that, then my next request is, can I have another 200 feet of trail like we have at the reservoir, and another pocket park? If they say yes to that, what should we ask for? Another 200 feet. Yeah. Yep. Question is, safety perspective. New Jersey Transit is, I think rightly very focused on safety. They have a lot of rail yards. They have a lot of area in New Jersey where high-speed trains abut against many uses. So they're very focused on safety. There's trip hazards.
Well, what I meant for the pocket park idea, right? Like,
Yep.
if you're just curving in, like, where's the danger? I guess I don't see it because I just see trees.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you're out here, so
Not even entering it at that point. If that's the
yeah,
point, that's it.
they ask very good questions like, how would you keep people from falling? What type of insurance coverage do you need? How would you manage access? What if people don't want to leave or start going in on their own, causing trouble? Those are all like very realistic questions that have very clear answers. Limited accompanied tours. There'd be a guide initially that would be giving a talk. Might even be me, unless we can find somebody better. People would have to sign a waiver. We would have insurance through the various entities that would cover folks, and they would be escorted out at the end, just like many parks that are, dawn to dusk. Question.
A couple things. One, just in terms of the political environment, and we mentioned that there are ongoing efforts, and there will be, to make that a road, to make that highway service roads. Those have continued, and I've been beating them down, whack-a-moling them for years online. That anytime you put a bus there that's a roadworthy vehicle, even if it's got special little non-asphalt tracks or wherever it has, it's still a bus. And that is going to give fuel to people who say, oh, well, you got buses through there. Let's put a couple more lanes in, cars in. And, we don't want that, right? I don't think anybody's want that. Also, just the way that buses and trains generally work, especially in cities, is that buses are what you put when you don't have that. That is a precious railroad right of way, flat, straight. It was made for trains or made for heavy rail and used for that. Those are incredibly rare, and there's always big fights over them. A bus is the last thing you want to do there. A bus is what you put on any of the other 50 ribbons of asphalt that already exist. You take two of them and one in each direction, you make them true BRT, or at least bus only lanes like on 14th Street or something, or you just run a lot more buses. Buses are what you do when you don't have a railroad right away. And it's just a tremendous waste and a temptation to start doing that. That's neither fish nor fowl. Like keep it a park and bike lanes and walk paths and parkland, and eventually maybe put the HBLR through it to Secaucus, which would be revolutionary, or find some other way to do that. But to put a bus there is a waste. And also, like, the whole rationale here about the World Cup, they're not going to do anything through that by the World Cup. That's the mere fact that they're talking about that in connection with the World Cup is ridiculous. Like, maybe they'll do that other part out to Secaucus. That they're trying to do something in the far west from MetLife Stadium to Secaucus Junction. Maybe they'll do that out in the highway somewhere, but the mere fact that it's sort of being bandied about is, well, we have to hurry up. If you've been down the arches, nothing is going to be built there by June at all. Not no kind of transportation except Wellington's, hip waders is going to be useful there. So there's a lot that's strange and wrong about this whole conversation to me.
I would love you to be able to put that comment with a little like voice dictation right into our comment form, because I think it's very well said.
I thank you. I do that a lot. Where do I do that? You can tell me later.
QR code.
Okay.
We'll leave the QR code up at the end. We won't rush that off the screen.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about who the players are that are involved with this project. In other words, who have you been approved to work with in terms of grant funding? Who are you hoping to work with? What are the roadblocks that are, that you're trying to get past right now? I'm just kind of curious who all the players are, that you either are working with or hope to work with. That's it.
Mm-hmm. The easiest one is New Jersey Transit and a simple demonstration park. We've been variously generously supported by you all through the Journal Square Association to have more funds to produce more educational material, to expand some of the visuals, to expand the model, to do some more testing and design and layout, and to think about how we could connect this to the embankment, for example. We're hopeful that there'll be more of that, because a few $1,000s goes surprisingly not so far in an endeavor like this. Beyond that, there's obviously all of the city players, there's the DEP, there's New Jersey Transit, and there's elected officials. But thankfully, with this project, there isn't a huge insurmountable barrier. There's a lot of people with other priorities and other things they're focused on. So it's a question of getting bandwidth and getting focus and moving kind of incrementally towards the goal. But thankfully, there is no huge barrier. And very similar to the embankment, like while everyone's been doing whatever they've been doing in life, this park has been creating itself and maintaining itself at no cost to the taxpayer. The irreplaceable trees have been growing. It's been draining itself. The ice has fallen, the snow has fallen, it's melted, it's drained. So it's sort of proven itself out as being a functional park, and hopefully with a very light touch can be added to.
Let me piggyback on this. I'm into the politics of this, meaning I think we got to figure out how to move the New Jersey Transit in our direction. So, Rahid, I remember at the feasibility study presentations, a whole series of them at Dickinson 2-3 years ago, wasn't that long ago. My understanding was that New Jersey Transit had agreed to splitting the arches in half and have one part be a linear park and have the other part be potential future rail. At the time, they were talking rail. I totally agree with Tony that we don't need any of that in there, but I'm also willing to compromise if that's what it takes to get it to happen the same way the embankment had to make a compromise to allow a developer to take a piece of it. So am I? No, it seems pretty similar to me. Anyway, first question is, am I right that New Jersey Transit agreed to that earlier model, or am I just being overly naive?
It's when you get into the details that you start really understanding what they were agreeing to. Will the Greenway, the real question is, will the Greenway come before transit? Or if anything transit related is implemented there, will the Greenway already be there? They never really were clear about that. And in a way, they didn't really want to even show the Greenway without a transit component next to it. And you can kind of see why, because once the Greenway is in there, like you said, as soon as people get down there, they're going to fall in love with the space. They don't want to give it back. It doesn't explicitly say in the feasibility study that the Greenway will come before transit, but it does suggest that a Greenway can be implemented in the short term with a future transit component. Now, whether or not as to whether or not they agreed to that, it's not clear.
All right, that seems like the question.
Yeah.
And I think, adding the demonstration project to that conversation, that's really all we should be talking about. The other stuff, which I love, all the amenities that go with it, the connectivity, et cetera, et cetera. Frankly, comes after all this stuff. I mean, you got to figure out how to get New Jersey Transit to let somebody, I was going to say us, but not us, build a Greenway. So what do we have to do to make that happen? I think that's the conversation.
That's the question. Yeah, that we need I think really right now we're trying to push for at least having like Chris said, a meaningful discussion with transit. We haven't really been able to get through that. We are getting hints, I think Chris mentioned that he's able to go with his access agreement into the arches and do some studies. So they have been amenable to some things, but it's a real question of liability. And we haven't really had an ability other than maybe once with the congressman and the senator. With their push, we were actually able to get a tour with them down there just so they could see the space too and understand how meaningful it is. But they were still pretty wary about doing that. There was a lot of kind of precautions they took. They brought in their own construction team. They made sure everyone was safe. So that's, I feel like, the level of detail they're looking for when we're starting to talk about accessing the space is like, what are the details in order so we can feel good about letting people in here.
Gondola. That's like over top of everything and it goes over it and it'll be a big tourist trap and everyone will take the gondola back and forth to just see the view and it'll terminate in Hoboken.
QR code, send it.
Building off what Steve was saying about the politics and how do we push New Jersey Transit, just curious, has there been any effort yet to bring people out to New Jersey Transit board meetings to speak on this topic? And if not, I would definitely recommend that because you'd be surprised how poorly attended those are and how big of an impact 10 people coming to speak about the same thing can really have. And the press covers those meetings. So then they report out, hey, 10 people showed up to speak out against putting buses in the Bergen Arches. And there's a multiplier effect with that. Several of us in this room have been actively involved in fighting the turnpike trap, which was successful after many years of advocacy there. And we did that largely the same way, showing up relentlessly to these New Jersey Turnpike Authority board meetings that no one knows about. They're at 9 a.m. on weekdays. It's a joke, but that's besides the point. New Jersey Transit board meetings are more accessible time-wise. They do tend to be, they vary, but they do have ones that are in the evening, so it's easier to go to after work. But all that to say, we also would coordinate and have elected officials come speak at those board meetings as well. So now it's a mix of regular people and the important people, and that had a multiplier effect too. And I know that Senator Mukherjee is very tight with Chris Calori, who's the CEO or whatever, head president, something like that, head of New Jersey Transit. So he could have a lot of leverage on this too. So yeah, I think a good next step would be organizing people to come speak at the board meetings about this.
Where's the county on this was the question. Stopping by our office, looking at things in detail, giving substantive feedback, talking about next steps and talking about how they can be involved. So a lot of momentum building, agree about going to the board meetings. Our goal was to go to the board meetings with 10 events completed. We got 2 more to go. And then we can say with a very full heart that we have heard from everyone who wanted to come out and tell us anything under any circumstances. People have had the chance to put things online. A lot of folks have been by the office. So we've got a little more work to do, and we're, pinging high schools. We're pinging more folks, but I feel like we've very broadly have input that we can honestly say is reflective of what's on people's minds.
Just wanted to mention about those state meetings. One really good thing about them is they really keep score. Like they record who showed up and spoke and how many were for and how many against, and they have to. Like that's baked into their process. And we realized that after a while with Turnpike that, it's like, oh, they got 40 comments against again. And maybe nobody else in the world hears it, but they have to take that into consideration. That goes in all kinds of official reporting. The other thing is gondolas usually are sort of gimmicks, but it's funnily enough, one of the few places they actually make sense is where you have a cliff like the Heights, and then lowlands, you have the waterfront, and then the Heights are both urban, dense areas. That's the kind of place that actually makes sense. And we used to have an inclined plane railroad many, many years ago that, and a trolley bridge, both of them going up the Heights. So the idea that maybe something can span over there and be elevated, or maybe elevated trolley over 139, there are lots of innovative things you can do to get mass transit out to the west. There's probably only one place you can have this verdant park and bike walk trail like this. That's a unique use, but we shouldn't be afraid to think about that. Actually, the former director of infrastructure, Barker Patel, actually talked about maybe a gondola up the Heights one of these days. It's one of the few places it would actually make sense. There in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about the office space. Oh, there it is. That orange juice is featured very prominently in our office. We've got our pictures. We want to get some more large pieces printed all the way around, more maps from different angles, pieces on the history of the Bergen Arches, and build out our office from more of an office to office plus a museum, mini museum.
Just before you have your question, Vincent did print that 3D model that you see on the table. So he taught an NJIT architecture studio class, and they were kind enough to give us the model. It's been really helping show people like where the arches is and what it's next to, and it really brings it to context. So just wanted to point that out there before you ask your question.
I was just thinking about the state of New Jersey Transit. We were talking about that, and they have like many governments right now, they are in a big funding crunch, and they've released a document called the Land Plan. And it's basically a document that they have 8,000 pieces of real estate in the state of New Jersey, and they're asking any real estate developer or investor to take a look at all of their assets, and they can be developed and they could sell them and make some basically money with non-fair dollars is what they're saying. So they ultimately, I think what will motivate them the most is the sale of the property. I think anyone who works at transit that gives this property away for free is something that would be interesting to them at this period of time. And if there was a buyer lined up, whether it's a county, the state, the DEP, the city, or a consortium of a group, they're having an open house on April 21st for all of their real estate division and developers and investors to kind of network and get together and talk about real estate deals within their asset of their asset. So it might be something that is a way to approach them. It's to sort of line up like a buyer to, and start working with their real estate division. Just a thought. Yeah.
I'll be there,
Thank you.
but it's going to be with the license agreement with an offer to rent part of the arches for $1, just like a concession. And if $1 doesn't do it, maybe we'll have to go up. But every different way that we can approach this and have some involvement, we're actively exploring.
I was just gonna say, I think this is actually a really good, well, two things. Miso, your question about who's asking for this is a very valid question. And I think everyone should put that in their comment form to press them, to see, is there actually any ridership data that is, who's begging for this? Because I don't suspect it exists, but put that in your comment form. One thing I think you should maybe look at is opportunities like Celebrate Trails Day, National Trails Day, to push them. That's one of the things, we are looking to do a Celebrate Trails event, and on the piece of the Greenway that is in Montclair that is owned by, that piece is owned by Transit. So we had to ask them for permission. And so if you were to ask them for permission for something you're doing, all of a sudden it might be like, maybe we need to figure out what is our response to folks wanting to actually use this and use it as a community event and get people to actually engage in this in an active way. So I would encourage you to keep pressing, because we certainly are.
Good idea. Thank you.
Hi, I'm joining from Bayonne, and what I would really love for, I guess, everyone who's involved in decision making for this is to understand that a local issue, but also maybe all of Hudson County and even broader. So when you mentioned there's stakeholders involved outside of the county, looking for bus service passing through, maybe for buses, but certainly for bikes and active transportation and recreation. So I got inspired by Jersey City's Greenway Connectivity Network Plan in 2023. And in living in Bayonne, it was only, I would say short logical extension that if Jersey City is leading this effort, Bayonne can be a part of that as well. So it's, the impact really is a ripple effect all across the region and for connectivity and green space preservation. So I just hope that that's taken into account when the stakeholders are considered for this project. But also, yeah, it's just, we saw with the term, so to board meetings as well. I'll just put this down. But maybe there are one thing, but then already told it Greenway. I would just love to see that sort of and our many coming from all the decision makers we see that we all. I'll put that at the top.
If no one has any more questions, we'd invite you all to come up and look at the maps closer. One more question, or maybe more questions, but
Just a quick clarification. So the comments that we're submitting go to Bergen Arches Preservation Coalition, but is there a vehicle for submitting comments to New Jersey Transit at this juncture or not yet?
not yet.
Okay.
But we're going to take them there.
Okay, cool.
We've borrowed a printer, but we have just the QR code that we can put up. Reed, we should make a flyer, I think, is the takeaway.
Yeah, the QR code will take you to it. We have a website at bergenarches.com/comment. We can put it on a flyer. I think it's in our office.
I'm looking for something that I can send around to get other people.
Oh, yeah, we'll create a flyer. Okay, send it to you. And we've been sending it on our newsletter, so if you, I know we printed it out as well, so we've been kind of handing it out to people. But yeah, it's bad to lack on it, so if you have ideas, send it our way. I will say we did submit a letter to NJ Transit at their last board meeting. And Jersey Diggs also submitted questions to NJ Transit when we were doing our interview. And it's really right now just been questions. Why wasn't the Greenway mentioned? Are you planning roadways through the arches? We always thought it would be light rail, something lighter than a roadway. We haven't gotten direct responses. And the closest we probably got was on when we did a New Jersey 12 piece. They did mention something about putting greenways next to transit, which is all they will say. And it kind of goes to the point that you were asking, will they ever allow us to build a greenway before transit? They want to see a greenway next to transit, and that's kind of their message right now. But I think it would help us, like if we can connect with other groups, I know Bike JC or the Embankment, we can share that letter that we sent to them. That way we can get more people sending them letters. At some point, we'll keep hosting, we're going to keep hosting these community meetings to get the awareness out there. And then at some point, we could definitely do what someone suggested, which is a showing at their next board meeting. I would totally be for that. Well, if no one else has any questions, feel free to walk around. There's a lot of stuff to see around the room before we take it down. We're going to need some help bringing it back. So if there's any volunteers that want to help us do that, they can come check out the space at 815 Kennedy. If not, we can talk and schedule some time to meet later on. But thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Information.
Oh, I did, yeah. Thank you.